and welcome to Mann's Model Moments and another Tuesday talk. So today I am revisiting that old familiar friend of ours, Hornby and Airfix, of course, because there are a couple of things which are happening or due to happen or have happened with the Hornby group and specifically with Airfix that I think are worth discussing and keeping an eye on. The first is fairly positive. There will be some news tomorrow, which I think people will be interested in. I can't talk about that because it's under embargo at the moment, but always good to see good stuff coming from Airfix. And again, a lot of what I've said in the past about Hornby, I think people think of me as ragging on Airfix. To be very clear, if people don't yet understand, I'm a real fan of Airfix. Airfix have made massive improvements to their brand in the last 15 years. From 2010, when they kind of started, the whole Hornby journey, to the present day, they've invested in new toolings. Their level of detail has massively increased. The engineering fit of their parts is superb now. If you look at kits like the Fairy Gannet, the Sea King, the most recent Wessex, they're all fabulous kits. And the tooling is worthy of manufacturers and being mentioned in the same sentence as Tamiya and ICM. And I think a lot of people, a lot of Americans, sorry guys, I love you, but you're always ragging on you Brits, have a real hard on for Airfix. I've mentioned this before. No, I'm judging the kits exactly as they are. And they're very good kits. If you look at any recent Airfix kit, it's pretty much at the top of the game. The things that have really let Airfix down are not Airfix-specific issues. They're not to do with the Airfix design team or Dale and his leadership of the group. It really has to do with fundamental underlying and underpinning elements of the Hornby group, which is, of course, part of or owned by Phoenix Asset Management. Now, of course, the Fraser Group now has an increased share in Hornby, 9% it is now. And maybe some of the changes we've seen in what they called a recovery plan a couple of years ago are due to that. And part of that, I think people forget or haven't mentioned this in the same sort of sentence, whilst talking about how great Hornby is and all the good things they've done. Well, not really. They've put the money in at the beginning, and the Airfix guys have done the good stuff. Hornby are looking at going back to profitability. So they were profitable for a couple of years. I think basically through mismanagement of the different brands, they lost money in 2024. They have a running debt, which is common for companies. It's not the huge disaster that some people think it is, but they're making a loss, which isn't good. That's not what a company wants. Obviously, if they've made investments, then that can be planned. But the fact that they have a recovery plan to get back to profitability suggests that it isn't. So, what were part of those plans? Well, the first one was they saved £1 million this year by laying people off. Right? So this isn't nice, friendly company being all, lovey-dovey. They got rid of their warehouse, and this was all in the headquarters down in Margate. They got rid of people, basically went to a third-party supplier now in the Midlands. I must say, as a retailer and as a personal customer, so I've ordered from the Airfix website, and I've talked about that before, and I'll talk about that again in a few minutes, so I'll hold on that one. My personal experience as a retailer and a customer of the new fulfillment centre has been worse than what Hornby were doing personally before. The boxes that they ship in now are the lowest quality boxes I've seen of any shipper. They're lower, I can say lower quality than the ones I use. What I mean is they have a thinner wall thickness than the boxes that I send stuff out in. And the thing is, my boxes are the largest box size for a small parcel. Anything larger than that, so if you ordered a Type 45 from me, for instance, it would be either covered in brown parcel paper and taped up, or put in a bespoke box because my boxes are all sized so that they are the maximum allowable by the Royal Mail for a small parcel. So I know anything goes in there is a flat shipment rate. Anything above that, I'll have to go and do bespoke and make sure that it's smaller than the Royal Mail's medium parcel dimensions. And because that's quite big, don't really want to get a set of boxes specifically for that, because those are a few, 1 in 20 maybe parcels work out at that. But the point is, a larger box needs a thicker wall, preferably a double wall, in order to maintain its integrity. Imagine making a meter cube from cartridge paper. It's not really going to work. If you make a 10 centimeter cube from cartridge paper, it's fine. So a small box, you can get away with thinner card to maintain the same structural integrity. So they're using, for those sort of medium-sized boxes, a thinner cardstock, corrugated card, of course, than the small boxes that I use. So there's a chance for damage, and I have had kits come from that fulfillment center which have had dented fronts and stuff because they've been mishandled. The packaging inside is highly variable. I've had some which have virtually no packaging, some which have had loads of packaging, different types of packaging. It's really odd, stuff just thrown in all together. And they use a super, super strong tape, which is incredibly difficult to get off or like to open. If you imagine a box and you push in one side, if it's got normal tape on, you can push it so that the tape detaches slightly and then use that to rip up. I'm sure we've always done that on a box. You can't do that with this tape. The box breaks before the tape, which shows you how poor the boxes are. But anyway, all of that aside, that saved Hornby £1 million this year on wages, on staffing costs. So people that are no longer employed, that are now farmed out to a third-party service to save money. Now, obviously, I don't think that in the long term that's going to save them money, but we will see. Now, the big news on this Tuesday talk is that Hornby are closing Hornby America. So they are no longer going to have a direct presence in the United States. If you go to the Hornby USA website right now, you can go on, it's still there. Every single item is out of stock, so all the Airfix stock has already been sold to another supplier. So it looks like if you're in the US, and maybe this was the final straw on the camel's back were the import tariffs. A lot of people have stopped exporting to the US. Now, of course, without a distribution center that can bring things in, maybe they just thought, well, we might as well just cut the cord now, right? But it does mean that I believe Michael's in the US, which is for the UK viewers a kind of almost like Wilkinson's was, I guess, or maybe not like Wilkinson's, maybe more like Hobbycraft in the UK. It's kind of a craft place, where you go to do decoupage and, get your artists' paints and stuff, if you don't have a dedicated shop in the area. They are distributing Airfix kits. Now, I think it's very much like in Hobbycraft. What's there is there. You'll pay full whack for it until they need to clear stock, and then they'll do some sort of sale and get rid of it. Again, I don't think that's a particularly good business model. One of the things that Hobbycraft is known for is there is no expertise, there's no support. They employ general staff that don't know about decoupage or papier-mâché or model kits or Warhammer, other than, what general knowledge they've had from life. And generally they'll employ younger people because they're cheaper. So again, it's this de-skilling, it's this, it's a commodity, it's not a niche product, which is unfortunate because we are a niche hobby. So the reason, and I was discussing this with a customer actually, the reason that a model shop, a physical model shop, works in the UK at the moment, I think, and probably in other areas of the world, is because it's niche, it's because it's specialized, it's because you can get things that it's difficult to get elsewhere. That, yes, you could probably order them online, but you might have to go to 4 or 5 different websites to order 4 or 5 different things. It's unlikely one would have all of those pieces in that you're wanting. Model shop is much easier to go in. You don't have to pay 5 different lots of shipping to get 5 different things. You can just go there and get it all. You can get some advice, maybe got an alternative product or a better product. That's the value add of a model shop run by somebody who knows modeling. Whether they be a modeler or just have been in the business for a long time, whether that's a rail model shop or radio controlled or plastic models like mine. So we're losing that element. So again, I feel for you guys in the States. I love you guys. And it's sad to see Airfix pulling out, or rather, it's sad to see Hornby pulling out so that you won't be able to get Airfix kits basically for the foreseeable future other than what's already in stock. I imagine Airfix are probably holding off on shipments to the US whilst all this gets sorted. So my advice would be, if you see a physical Airfix kit in a store in the US, and you're interested in the subject, buy it now, don't wait, because it's uncertain when those kits, or even if those kits, are going to be coming back. Now that kind of brings me to the next piece, which is international shipping. So because of this, I've thought about opening my store to product sales to the US, because, okay, the shipping is going to be fairly high. But if you've got no other option, I would rather provide you with a possible set of products than you not have that option at all. So that's something I'm going to be looking into in the near future. I know that shipping to the US from the store works really well. So I've sent several shipments to John Alec. I said the last one arrived in 2 days, which is phenomenal. That is faster than I can send something in the UK. Even with Royal Mail's 48-hour target delivery service, which is what I ship the majority of my parcels with, they don't arrive in 2 days. It's very rare. I often get messages from customers who say, well, thank you very much, my parcel arrived. I thought, I posted that last week. That should have arrived by last Friday, and it's arriving now on a Tuesday. But I'm glad that they received the product. It's a tracked service, so I know that it's going to get there, or at least there'll be a record of what happened to it if anything does go wrong. That's only happened, I think, once, twice maybe. But opening the store to the US, I think, is probably my next logical move, because that serves a need. I think for Europe and the rest of the world, I'm still holding off, because Europe, I think, is pretty well served. You've got a lot of hobby stores in, personal small stores throughout Europe, and you've got some fairly large European suppliers. So I don't think there's the requirement. I'm not trying to take over the world. I'm not trying to be the number one model shop, even in the UK. I just want to supply people with good quality kits, a good selection of tools, give good advice, be on the market serving the market rather than building an empire. So I think because there is a need now, or there will be a need in the future for the US, I think that's something that I'm going to be looking into. So if you are in the US and you're considering that, get in touch through the channel email. If you go into the About section of YouTube on the channel page, you can actually click more information and it will give you my email address. You can also contact me through the shop. So that's mansmodelmovements.com. There is a chat function there. That will give you my contact details. That's the same email for both the channel and the shop. I don't like saying it on streams or putting it on the screen for this, because there's so many bots out there at the moment. They can scour all of this and use it and just bombard you with spam. So it's best to actually go through those channels, find my email, and then send me a message there, or through the chat function on the web store. It comes through to the same email. So, because before I open up the store generally to the US, I would rather have, a few instances where I can prove the proof of concept. Yes, I've sent stuff to John Alec, but I want to make sure that, it's a consistent service. I use UPS. They seem to be consistently reliable, very fast. The shipping is relatively expensive. I can't get away from that. But again, if you're buying kits that you can't get anywhere else, you have to factor that in, right? So a few other things on Airfix. I mentioned there's going to be an announcement tomorrow. So look forward to that. It's nice news. It's good. But they're also doing some mystery kits. So they're now doing a mystery kit that you can buy from the website direct for £10. So I recently put an order in. I had some hobby points to use from some prior purchases. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to try this out and see what it is. Apparently this will change every week. So, and it's a kit worth at least £10 or more than £10 RRP. So I thought, as I'm buying this anyway, why not? And it arrived very promptly. I must say, it was 2 days, which was, again, the fulfillment center that Hornby are using now I've got a very variable experience of, because I've had a personal order that's taken 2 days, and this last one. I've also had one that's taken over a week, and that was a higher value order. So I don't really get what's going on there, but that's by the by. And the kit that arrived was this. The 148 scale Curtis Tomahawk, which for £10 is a real bargain. In fact, it's so much of a real bargain, there's no way that any retailer can compete with this. So again, it's kind of this love-hate relationship with Airfix, in that I love the stuff they're doing, but on the Hornby side, the whole pushing the direct-to-customer piece and screwing retailers over, I really hate. I loathe it as a business practice. I think it's one of the most reprehensible, underhand, and just wrong business practices I've ever seen. And I don't mean that just as, oh, I'm going to be screwed over as a retailer. I mean, if I was in Revell, right? If I was a product manager in Revell, I would look at Airfix and say, you know, that's just not good. It's just not how you do business. It's not. I would use it as an example of, if we're going to compete with Airfix, how do we set ourselves above? I'd be like, we focus on things like that. In our marketing, we will say, you know, we support retailers. I would push that. I would make them the bad guy, because they've made themselves the bad guy. I would just emphasize that, right? And then Revell looks great. And Luke, Revell, if you're looking, that's a free one from me. That's how I would approach it. It's not underhand, because you've not done anything wrong, right? All you have to be is not that guy to look good by comparison. So again, I know the reason for these £10 kits. It's overstock, right? Because retailers also get a list of things like the upcoming Black Friday deals, which I'm not participating in. And the reason I'm not participating in, or the reasons I should say, firstly, it devalues the product. So any product you already have. So let's say the Ferret Scout, right? Ferret Scout, it's a very recent kit. The Ferret Scout Mark 1 has only come out this year. And if I have got some of those on the shelves, and then I buy a whole load of Black Friday stock and put the price down, I'm probably only going to break even on those kits, or maybe make a loss, because I've paid full price for the others. And I can't just lower the ones that, like, oh, these two are full price, but these two are the special Black Friday price because I bought those cheaper. Customers don't get that. Customers aren't going to do that. They're going to buy the two cheap ones, and then they're going to look at your full price ones and like, well, that guy just paid £15 for that. Why am I paying $22.50? It doesn't make sense, right? So it devalues the product. It devalues it to the retailers, so retailers aren't making as much money, which is obviously the whole reason you have a business, is it has to be profitable. It has to be profitable to be able to survive. And the second reason is that, and I've mentioned this before with Hornby overall, if you're doing these flash sales and these Black Friday specials and all this kind of stuff, it seems good on the face of it. But I've mentioned this before. If it's too good to be true, it probably is. Why are certain kits put on Black Friday deals? It's because the company wants to get rid of them. It's not because they're super successful. Super successful companies do not give discounts, do not have flash sales. Take Apple as an example. When I was in corporate leadership, one of the things that I implemented in my leadership team was, look, the sales guys have to go into our financial system to even find out if an order has been fulfilled. That's wasted time. Those guys, we don't want them doing that. We don't want them going into the financial system. We don't want them sitting at home doing admin. We want them out in the field selling stuff. They are the revenue generating function of our company. And when they're not generating revenue, that's bad for the company. We want them out on the road 4 days a week, meeting healthcare professionals, giving them solutions which will help patients. They'll help diagnostics. They will improve people's lives. That's the whole point of it. If we're only doing that 2 days a week instead of 4, potentially a hospital doesn't upgrade its imaging systems, it doesn't get its new cancer diagnostics, people might actually die as a result. So I worked in a very high impact area, right, directly affecting people's lives. If you can get a cancer diagnosis 1 day earlier, it can mean the difference between life and death. And that's what we were all about. So we gave all of the guys iPads. And that way they could connect remotely, they could get access to all their sales figures, they could show customers demos and all that kind of stuff. Kind of standard, but at the time it was revolutionary, because it was a while ago. And an iPad is a fairly expensive piece of kit, and we were buying like 300 of them. And we asked Apple for a discount, and they said, well, because you're buying so many, we will give you a 2.5% discount. That is the kind of scale of things, because they don't need to give discounts, because their products are successful, because people want them. You don't see Tamiya doing massive flash sales. I've mentioned this before. A successful business can control what it's doing. It understands its business. It can control its stock, and it's got people that want its product. Then it charges the normal prices that it wants to. It's completely worked out. A flash sale isn't worked out. Airfix didn't make, I don't know how many, say 5,000 Tomahawks with the idea of selling half of them at half price. That wasn't its intent. It wants to sell every single one of those for as close to the RRP as possible. If it gets down to half its stock and it wants to clear the warehouse, which I don't really understand if it's using external factor, other than, of course, they'll be charged for every item that's on the shelf. So, again, I don't think it's a long-term solution for saving money, but that's a bit of an aside. But if they got down to half of that stock and they wanted to clear it, and I've mentioned this before, if they've got a good supportive retail network, you go to your retail network and say, hey guys, how about 20% off all of these kits? And then you push them out into the market and you let the retailers do what they want with them. The retailers can either make an extra 20% margin, which is good for them, or they can reduce the prices, and again, probably not as much, like a 10% on these kits, or whatever it is. Again, that's good for them. It pushes sales through those outlets. And Airfix already has the money. So it can push all of those out, it gets all of that money in, and it clears the space in its warehouse, and it can go on and develop its next kit. But that's not the way that Airfix are operating. So again, I know I'm going to sound like a stuck record, but people don't understand the points I'm trying to make, and that's evident by some of the feedback I get from some of the things that people are saying about, oh, you hate Hornby, you hate Airfix. It's because of their business practices. I'm not calling out anything that they are not doing. Airfix, or rather Hornby, are the bad guys here. It's not me. I'm not the one that is going, I hate them, they're a bunch of sniveling cowards, or, it's not slander. It's me saying, look, the emperor has no clothes. So, in that story, the kid who says that is not the bad guy, right? The people who sold the emperor clothes that didn't exist is. So again, if you think I'm having a go at Airfix, you're wrong. If you think I'm having a go at Hornby, you're also kind of wrong, because all I'm doing is calling out something. It's a bit like me saying, hey, Stephen's cheating on his wife. And apologies to any Stephens or any wives. It's a hypothetical, right? It's just a name. It doesn't make me a bad guy for saying that, although how I say it obviously is, if I said it to his wife without consulting Stephen first, that would make me a bit of an arsehole. However, if I've gone to Stephen and said, hey, you really shouldn't be cheating on your wife, and he carries on doing it, and then I call it out, I think that's fair game. And people have said, oh, well, you should have spoken to Airfix. I have. Multiple times. I've told my reps, different reps. I've spoken to Dale. I've told Hornby through my Airfix channels all of these issues long before I actually aired them, right? So that doesn't make me a bad guy. If you think I'm a bad guy, that's fine. You can have your opinion. All I'm doing is saying what Hornby are doing. And if you think that's bad, I can't help you. I'm sorry. I'm not calling out Airfix. I really like what Airfix have been doing. What I don't like is the way that Hornby is doing business. You know, it's trying to get back to profitability, and it's doing it in the Sports Direct way, right? Which isn't a good thing. There are good things that companies like Sports Direct, you know, the Fraser Group, that business practices can be done to slim down a business, to make it more efficient. It's not flash sales. It's not getting rid of your warehouse to an inferior service. There are ways to do it. They're not doing them, as far as I can see. And unless there is some magical thing behind the scenes, which we haven't seen, which I doubt, they aren't doing that. And until they start doing that, I'll still keep calling them out. When they change, I will be the first person to come and say, hey, you know what, they've changed. On that note, I will say I did receive my pre-order of various kits, the 176 JMB reboxes that Airfix have done recently, and the Jaguars, which, again, errors like that don't happen if you're properly funded. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a second. But that was sent. The total value of that was about half of the minimum shipment quantity that Hornby quote, and yet that was sent to me. I haven't contacted Dale about that yet because it contained the Jaguars, and of course they just withdrew the Jaguars at the same time, and I didn't want to get in touch with him whilst he was dealing all that without that flack and stuff that was coming from that. Because I don't know whether that represents a change in policy or it's just a one-off. It could have been a mistake, right? In the same way that the Jaguars were a mistake. And on the Jaguar, and apologies, I haven't put the video up yet. I've been struggling this past week with time and some personal issues. So I've not got to the final editing of the video. It will be out this week. But that was a mistake. I don't blame Airfix for the mistake, although Dale and his team are responsible. I don't think they're the root cause. So if Dale had the appropriate staffing to allow somebody to be in QC checking all of these things, it wouldn't have happened, right? The fact that it did happen tells me that they probably got the tooling. It's an older tooling. Is it all there? Yes. Does it all look good? Yes. Do a couple of impressions. Do they look okay? Flash-wise and stuff? Yeah, it looks good. Send it off. That's, I think, the kind of checking they did, rather than, okay, are we absolutely sure this is a GR1, not a Jaguar Mark A? I don't think they get down to that granularity. Now, that's obviously a cost issue, right? What it boils down to, you can look at like, oh, well, it was their fault. They should have had somebody. Yeah, they should have had somebody check that. Why didn't they? Probably because of the pressures of release and, hey, this is an older kit. It's vintage classic. People know that. We just need to make sure it's okay. The tooling isn't terribly destroyed. Bang. Minimum amount of checking, right? If they could afford to actually have somebody in India checking each of those impressions, okay, is it exactly what it says on the box? Then it wouldn't have happened, right? I don't think it's the big disaster that people kind of made it out to be. It's unfortunate, but in a business that doesn't have the structure, because it doesn't have the staffing, because it isn't given the right amount of money to do that, mistakes will happen. It doesn't happen in Timir. Why? Because they have people checking all of that stuff. They do it all internally, and Japanese companies are supreme at QC, which is why a lot of successful Western companies, the ones that I work for, did a lot of those Japanese practices because they work. People checking stuff all the time. What gets measured gets done is a good phrase that we had. If they weren't measuring exactly, does this match what the instructions are? Does this build up to the right kit? because of timelines or funding or whatever, that's how these mistakes slip through, right? These are the sort of things that industries like aerospace catch very well, because the consequences of them getting something wrong are so catastrophic, and why flying today is much safer than it was back in 1970, because throughout history, all of those near misses and crashes and stuff have added to safety procedures over the years that have led to flight being incredibly safe these days. So that's all I have for today. I'm sorry for those of you who inwardly groan when you see me put up a video which is about Hornby and Airfix, but I thought it was important to call out the fact that Hornby USA is closing, for those who didn't know. There's not a lot online. If you go online, you can go and verify it. I'll put a couple of links in the video description below. I think it's slated to finally close around November, so we've got about a month, but again, you can't buy anything from the Hornby website in the US. Everything is out of stock, so the fact that it's not happening for a month doesn't really make any difference to us as consumers. The physical products, I imagine, are what's going to be moved. The entire warehouse has been sold to another company that's not been disclosed yet, and then obviously kits will be available through them. But whether those will be resupplied in the future at the moment is anyone's guess. So I guess watch this space and we'll see what happens. Other than that, I wish you guys a very pleasant rest of your week. We have Mann's Model Moments midweek model meet tomorrow night at 8 o'clock UK time. That's going to be looking at our diorama with our Revell Land Rover again. So if you'd like a little bit of therapeutic build watching or interested in some diorama tips and tricks, then feel free to come along and join us for that. Other than that, I'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. Have a good one. Bye now. That's all for this instalment of Mann's Model Moments. If you enjoyed the video, please click the like button, subscribe to the channel for more like it, and share this video with others you think would also enjoy it. You can also follow me on Instagram, Twitter and Facebook, and if you're feeling generous, then I also have a Patreon, which is absolutely the best way of helping me to grow the channel and produce more content like this. With that, I hope you have plenty of modelling moments of your own, and I look forward to welcoming you in the next video.